Blake Ruffino, Joe DeLeone, and Gaby Urrutia. See, I told you I was going to do it. I did it perfectly. I hope I did it perfectly.
That was money.
But Gaby Urrutia, InsideTheU, is with us and joining us. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
Doing well, man. Excited to be on with you guys, man. Football season's around the corner and ready to talk some ball.
I don't know if there's somebody on 24/7 Sports that's been pushing the Miami agenda more than me, even though Joe over here has been saying that Darian Mensah is going to win the Heisman. But I got to be real with you. And, Gaby, we needed to bring you on because I do think Miami is the most interesting team going into the season because you just played for a national title. And then you come into a situation where I don't know if you're not better. Gaby, I mean, like, I don't know. So to kind of start this off as we get rolling, how good are the Hurricanes this season?
Man, I think Miami's going to be really good. Do they have that national title ceiling? I think that's kind of still to be determined. But this is a really loaded roster. I started at the back end of the Manny Diaz era, kind of transitioned through the early portion of the Mario Cristobal, obviously, and then just watching this roster get built piece by piece. It's special the way it's built. There's the top end of the roster that I think everyone gets really excited about, that everyone talks about, but really there's just a lot of depth. There's a lot of talent just across every position. And I really think that this team is kind of built to last. It's built to win. It's built to win in the postseason. So, of course, I learned last year, just kind of taking in the college football playoff run. Postseason is hard. That CFP run is difficult, but this team has, it has the foundation to be a really, really competitive team this year with the potential to make a deep playoff run.
Those that have dug into the Miami roster, like we've done on the show, and I've done it multiple times over on other outlets, understand that what you just talked about here, this team is loaded. It's a really good roster, even though they lost players. But do you think that with the fact that they're not being featured in the top 5 on a lot of rankings, coaches say that they don't pay attention to that stuff that much, but do you think that there's maybe an internal belief that they're being overlooked or disrespected?
I think just naturally Miami kind of has that chip on its shoulder. I think Mario Cristobal naturally has that chip on its shoulder that, they're not being, respected, especially in terms of just like, the SEC, these SEC schools seem to get, the upper hand in these preseason polls, or the Big Ten and all this conference stuff. Like Miami has performed against the top of each of those, major conferences, and they believe they belong in that conversation. But with that said, I think Mario Cristobal would prefer all the external noise to just be against them, honestly. Like, I think he would rather, that's what it's really been. Everyone's kind of questioned Miami. Is Mario Cristobal going to get this roster right? Is this going to be the year? Oh, Miami still hasn't won an ACC championship. Like, I think he would prefer that type of dialogue about his program, because now the program is at a place where it's healthy. They've performed. There's proof of concept. And now everyone's kind of singing their praises. This is kind of uncharted territory for the program, really. Miami hasn't been in this position in a while. Mario Cristobal really hasn't been in this position for a while either. They had 2 disappointing losses last year. Everyone kind of started talking about Miami underperforming, not maximizing. Then they kind of do this, and now everyone's kind of back on board. And so I think Mario Cristobal has heard the rat poison. I mean, he's kind of from that Saban tree of just like, this is rat poison. We need to just completely block out any external noise that needs to stay outside of these walls. And so, I bet that there's definitely a chip on his shoulder, because I'm sure he believes he has one of the best teams in the country. But I think he'd prefer for people to kind of, at least the national media, to still kind of sleep on his program a little bit.
Well, he's going to hate our ass. Well, and so, Gaby, I guess I turn into that, kind of piggybacking off of what Joe just asked. You talked about that playoff run. And I think the biggest thing for me was like, look, Mark Fletcher's getting a 3-yard gain, then it turns into a 12-yard gain because that offensive line is getting massive push. They're making massive waves. You bring in Jackson Cantwell, which I think everybody in the country is excited to see. I guess, what can you tell me about him, too, in this question? But I think that I hate to say this because it's Mario. Like the offensive line question, which I don't know if it's not the biggest question in the room, at least from national guys outside looking in. And you could come in here and say, yeah, Blake, they're really good. And I'm like, okay, well, it makes me feel a lot better about my picking them. What have you heard, seen, thought about this offensive line? Because there is a lot to replace. And let's just be honest. The truth of the matter of their run is because that offensive line said, I'm going to go full rock attitude era, and we're going to lay the smack it down on that candy ass. So I guess I just asked, what is that offensive line looking like going into fall camp and even going in through a week through camp?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest question marks, right? You lose 4 starters, a couple of bookend tackles in Markel Bell and CC Maui Noah. They have to figure it out, right? Like, I think that they're still working to find the best 5 group of guys. Again, they've recruited this position really well. They didn't go into the portal and go get a premium tackle or even go get a center the way that they have the past few years. Every year of the Mario Cristobal era, minus the first year, they went out and got a top center in the portal. They really believe in these guys. This is a group that Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal, of course, have developed. They've worked with these guys. And I think it's going to be an opportunity for some of those guys to step into bigger roles. You got Matthew McCoy and Samson Akwinlola. Those guys were like kind of co-starters at left guard last year. Those guys are looking kind of like they're both kicking out the tackle. So that's probably going to be your left and right tackle based on what we've seen to this point. We'll see if it stays that way all season. You got Jackson Cantwell coming in, who, I'm sure your listeners are very aware of just the freakish potential talent, traits that he possesses. He's working a lot with the guards. There's also another freshman tackle that I don't think the national media has kind of caught attention of yet, but there's another freshman offensive lineman, Ben Cogden, out of Ohio, that Miami signed, who's a 6'8", 330-pounder. Doesn't look very far off from Jackson Cantwell physically. He's competing for a starting offensive line job too. Wow. So there's a lot of guys. They got a lot of answers. They need to figure out, they got to figure out the way that it is all going to come together. But I'm very confident that at least early in the season, they're going to be a very strong run blocking unit. I think the pass pro and all those things, they're going to have to kind of settle into the season and kind of try to figure it out. And I can see this offensive line still getting some tweaks and fine tunes before they get to like the Clemsons and especially the Notre Dame at the end of the season. But Miami feels really good about just the body of players that they have to work with. They feel like they're legitimately 10 deep. They just need to go find the best 5 guys that they feel good about, just kind of putting them out there on the field.
Ooh, hilarious. The size that we're talking about here. The next kid who's coming in. I don't know where we know where Cantwell came from, but I don't know where Mario keeps finding these kids that are this big, but he also keeps finding really good pass rushers. Yeah. And a lot of people that want to doubt Miami are just jumping and saying like, oh, they lost Bain and Mesidor. They're not going to have much of a pass rush. But I think that the way that they make up with that is the talent in the interior with Scott Absolutely. And with Moton. And Lightfoot's somebody that I think fans are going to get familiar with, as well as Damon Wilson, who SEC fans know who he is. How difficult do you think it's going to be to replace Bain and Mesidor? Because from our perspective, we're kind of hoping that there is some sort of a replacement, maybe like a 70% replacement. How difficult do you think it's going to be for this Miami team?
Right. Look, you don't replace those guys, right? That was a generational tandem of edge rushers with just what you got from Mesidor and Ruben Bain. From a pass rushing standpoint, from an edge setting, run stopping standpoint, those guys were absolutely elite in every sense of the word. And to have 2 of them on the field at the same time, they barely came off the field. You don't replace those guys, right? But you recruit. Right? You recruit elite guys. You get those guys on campus, and Mario Cristobal always talks about you're recruiting their replacements as soon as those guys get on campus. And look, this is whether, depending how you feel about the star system and all that stuff, but this is a defensive line that's littered with former 5-stars. Marquise Lightfoot is a former 5-star. Damon Wilson is a former 5-star. Justin Scott, former 5-star. Armando Blunt, who's going to be another premier player for them on the defensive line, former 5-star. They got guys. There's so much talent on this defensive line. Do you have those 2 horses that are never going to come off the field that are going to give you that? I don't think so. Do you replace them even in the aggregate? Probably not. But I think that this is a really talented defensive line, and you're not going to do what you did last year. But I still think that this could be a very, very high quality defensive line. And to mention those interior guys, like you had the 2 game wreckers on the perimeter last year. You have those 2 game wreckers on the interior this year. So I think Justin Scott is going to have a massive season. He looks incredible in camp. This is a former basketball player. He kind of had to shape his body for football. He's been growing and adding that mass over the past couple of years. He looks incredible. Ahmad Moton looks like unguardable sometimes in camp, where it's just like, so where they lost on the perimeter, they really do gain it with those 2 interior guys. And I think that there's so much talent that people are going to learn about on the edges with this team too.
Well, first off, if you want great information like this from Gaby, who's absolutely delivering, you need to go over to 24/7 Sports. Use that promo code RJS60 at checkout. I mean, we're just trying to get inside the U as many subscribers as humanly possible over here, Gaby. So
I appreciate you guys.
Y'all need to go over there and check that out. I know that during this fall camp, Gaby, I've been reading everything that you've been putting out. I know we had other questions here. I kind of want to walk into something really quickly. What have you seen in Damon Wilson? Because here's the thing with me, though, too. You don't walk into 9 sacks. Right. I think Ruben Bain is a stud, okay? But Has there been anything like, is there a lot of camp buzz coming around him specifically? Like, what has it been around him? Because look, LSU went after him. I know personally what LSU offered him. Miami offered more. I know what Georgia was trying to do to get him back. Yeah. I guess what is the camp intel for him specifically to kind of add in on what Joe just asked?
Yeah, look, I think just the word on Damon Wilson right now, I think it's more about him coming more of that kind of complete defensive end, right? I think that's where they're challenging him in camp, is to kind of become more of like the edge setter. You know, you have to be able to play the run as well as rush the passer. And I think that's what Damon Wilson does at an elite level, is rush the passer. Like maybe just as a natural pass rusher, you could argue that maybe Damon Wilson is, you know, on that level of the Ruben Baines and all that stuff. But I think that's really where Miami's pushing Damon Wilson right now, is because they feel like there's still so much left in the tank for him. There's that next gear that he can hit developmentally as a defensive end, and working with Jason Taylor, who of course is, you know, one of the best defensive ends of all time, and now is proving his worth as a coach with the way he developed Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. You know, there's a lot of confidence in Damon Wilson, but they're also pushing him really hard. Just watching him in fall camp, they're getting on him. They're coaching him up super hard because I think that they expect a lot out of him, and they want him to be more than just like that premium pass rusher that I think he showed that he was in the SEC.
Makes sense. He creates so much havoc, and yeah. I know Joe sent over questions, but at the same time, I'm just like, I mean, again, and this is just more of a conversation. You don't walk into that, you know, and that's I feel like Bain and Mesidor. I mean, what was it, Notre Dame? Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the interception to start off the season. I mean, when you create that much havoc at edge, I mean, it's just good Lord. So I just wanted to know specifically about him. Darian Mensah. So, Gaby, I'm sure you saw this. I think we sent it to you. This dude over here, Joe, said, there's no question about it. There's no opinions that need to be else heard. Darian Mensah is going to win the Heisman. I guess I'll let Joe tag that off about what he thinks to kind of get your thoughts on that. But, dude, this team might be better offensively, maybe, especially at skill. And I know that Joe picked him to win the Heisman. I guess the both of you, what are you both hearing, seeing? And I'm sure Joe can add on to that too.
Yeah, I mean, like, what are you seeing from how has he performed? My big thing at putting my statement out there is I want to know if there's already been like early returns. Has there been like clear signals that the offense looks more explosive this time around at the beginning of camp?
Yeah, I think what Darian Mensah kind of brings to Miami, I think a couple things, right? I think his ability to make kind of quick decisions when he kind of needs to, that's where kind of like Malachi Tony comes in, right? Just finding his guy, delivering it. Those two have developed a really strong connection. So I think that's definitely been encouraging. But when things don't go according to plan, we're talking about the pass pro, right? Like he also does a really good job of extending plays. And when he extends those plays and on those kind of scramble drill type of plays, he has his guy in Cooper Barkate, which that was his scramble drill buddy up at Duke. You know, they did so much incredible work together just on when Darian Mensah was working out of the pocket, he has to find a guy. So they have great chemistry. And, you know, this is a really talented group of wide receivers. So I think Darian Mensah is definitely pushing the ball downfield. And I think that that's one area of offense this year where I think Miami knows they need to get better in comparison to that 2025 offense. That 2025 offense wasn't super explosive. Darian Mensah's offense at Duke, with just the numbers he put up, he is an explosive, you know, shot taker. I think Miami expects to get more of like that shot taking mentality with Darian Mensah, where he's going to push it down the field. We saw it in the spring game. You know, when he kind of gets into like that 25, that you know, 35 to 25 yard range, like he's going to take those shots at the end zone. He completed 2 touchdowns. I think it was Barkade and Dalen Upshaw that caught long touchdowns from Darian Mensah in the spring game. Like he's going to be someone that's going to help this offense become more vertical, and that's going to help this offense because too, I think early in the season especially, they're going to lean on that run game with this offensive line settling in. And I think that just the way Miami's going to run the ball, defenses are going to kind of have to pick their poison about how they're going to defend this team. So those Heisman numbers can come up with some of those big explosive plays because you're going to kind of suck in some of those defenses, and they're just going to be able to go right over the top of you too. They went into the portal, got some guys that provide some more of that vertical threat too. Vandravius Jacobs from South Carolina had like 4 explosive touchdowns last year for the Gamecocks. He had that big 75 yarder against Clemson. That was an amazing play. So you have guys who kind of you can bring in that can just give you that kind of deep shot potential. So it's going to be fun. Heisman, I mean, again, I may be pumping the brakes on that a little bit. We'll see. But I think that I do think that Darian Mensah is going to be very, very good and very productive in this offense.
Joe DeLeone, the Notre Dame guy, is trying to pump up Darian Mensah, and so that he can.
This is rat poison. This is rat poison.
It's all nothing. Gaby, to add on to that, I guess here's the question: Malachi Tony doesn't walk up on anybody no more. You're game planning for Malachi Tony. So, there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of ask this question. But Malachi Tony emerged, I don't want to say out of nowhere, because I think around Miami, people knew. What was his nickname? Baby Jesus or whatever?
Baby Jesus.
Yeah.
Been that way since American Heritage in high school. He was a freshman. They were calling him that.
So I don't think, locally he did. But, however, you go up against Notre Dame in game one, and he catches the deep post route. He makes an adjustment in his first ever touchdown. You're like, who is this? Who is Baby Jesus? And I'm not talking about Manger sitting in the front row of a Leonard Skinner concert like it's the Step Brothers. But you got a game plan for him now. And I guess my question is, you talked about picking your poison. How does he build off of that? And look, I love C.J. Daniels. I've been around C.J. Daniels a lot. I thought he was a good player. But this is a little bit different at the wide receiver room, as you mentioned, to the explosion. I guess, can he emerge even more? I mean, you have 100 catches as a freshman. That's a lot. But what have you seen from him? What do you think going into the season? And I don't mean this in a wrong way when I ask this. Is Barkay really going to be the MVP for Malachi Tony? Right? Because you kind of got, like, what are you going to do? You double him, shadow him, do it, bracket him? I guess, what have you seen from Malachi, and what are the realistic expectations year two for him?
Yeah, look, Malachi Tony, truthfully, is a better football player today than he was at any point during his freshman season. If you look at him, he's added mass. He was supposed to be a senior last year, so he was still he was really a baby, like he was 17 years old. Like, you can see he's starting to add more of like that kind of grown man strength where he's thickened up. He's added 10 pounds. You're looking at him and it's like, wait, Malachi Tony was a little kind of skinny, but now he looks like a big kind of thick wide receiver. He's gotten faster from what we've heard. He looks extremely explosive. I mean, he's such an impressive player. And I just think it's going to be difficult. Like, you can game plan for him, but it's true. Miami has so many answers between, Cooper Barkay. You got Josh Moore, who's a 6'4", 218-pound receiver on the outside. You got Dalen Upshaw, who's explosive. Vandrevius Jacobs, who can take you over the top. You got Elijah Lofton coming back at tight end, who's an awesome kind of flex tight end who can make you pay as well. And then you got that big running game. Like, there's a lot of, like, if you're gonna focus on Malachi Tony, like, you're going to have a hard time because there's so many other ways that Miami can beat you. And I want to drop this in there too, because I think that this is important. Last year was the 5th straight year in a Shannon Dawson run offense that the slot receiver has caught for over 1,000 yards, right? Dating back to Houston, he had Tank Dell. And so Tank Dell had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Xavier Streppel had the 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, in the first 2 years of his tenure. Malachi had it last year. The back end of those 1,000-yard seasons for both those guys, for Tank Dell and Xavier Streppel, were actually more productive in the second year of it than they were in year one. So, yes, 109 catches, that might be a little bit steep. I'm not saying he's going to catch 109 passes a year again, but, 1,200 yards, the 12 touchdowns. Like, I think it's on the table that Malachi Tony has a better season in 2026 than he did in 2025, because, I mean, that's kind of what the data is showing us. These guys are getting better in this offense, despite the fact that everyone knows that these are kind of the go-to guys. And again, I think that this is the best supporting cast that Miami's had on offense of the Mario Cristobal era, just between all the weapons that they have, that group of tailbacks that I think is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's one of the most slept on units in the entire country, is that running back room. And, I think it's going to open up a lot for Malachi Tony, because there's just so many different ways that Miami can kind of go and attack you with it. So you're going to have to find someone who can cover Malachi Tony, essentially, if you're going to beat Miami. And, I'm not sure if many teams in the country have one of those guys. No,
definitely not. I mean, especially the teams on Miami's schedule. They're not going to have the corners to be able to keep up with
Louisiana's own, baby. I mean,
that's right.
Louisiana, man. Joe, I'm sorry. I know it's your question time. I mean, it's Louisiana, baby. You're welcome.
Of course.
Jabari Antoine comes in and gets it.
That's right. Hey, man, that's my guy.
Hey, I mean, you're welcome. Thank you, Brian Kelly, for being dumb. Sorry, Joe.
I don't know what LSU is doing with Antoine. He's a stud, too.
Last question that I had, though, I think that naturally for a team to be successful, you need to have unexpected contributions from veterans that have been on the roster. Do you think that there's a guy that isn't getting the pub as everybody else? We just spent this whole time talking about all these big names that the national landscape knows about. Who do the national college football fans need to know about that could be an unsung hero?
Yeah, on offense, I'm going to go with Jordan Lyle, the running back.
Okay.
Mark Fletcher headlines that room, right? Everyone's talking about Mark Fletcher. Jordan Lyle started for Miami against Notre Dame last year to open the season. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize that. He got hurt in that game early, and the rest of the season, he didn't really look like himself. He was never really 100%. But Jordan Lyle beat out Mark Fletcher in camp to start for Miami in 2025. He looks very much like the running back who won that job a year ago. He's 6'1", 210 pounds. He looks extremely explosive, super fast, really strong. And he's coming in, he's very mission minded. Just talking with Jordan Lyle, he's ready to prove that he is that elite tier back that he was on track to becoming before that injury derailed his 2025 season. I think Mark Fletcher, again, he's the guy that's going to generate all the buzz, deservedly so. That college football playoff run was historic. He had an incredible year. He's one of the faces of the program. But Jordan Lyle as his counterpart, I think is going to be one of the most underrated kind of storylines heading into the season. I don't think people really realize this yet. You got Jordan Lyle in there. Marty Brown did a lot of really good things for them in the playoffs. Gerard Pringle stepped up against NC State, who was red hot at the time. I think they had just beaten Georgia Tech. He rips off 116 yards. He's like their number 4 back. And it's just like he almost got plucked because, programs in the SEC were coming calling in the portal, and he decided to stay. Miami has an extremely deep stable of backs. I think Jordan Lyle is as good as they come, honestly, in a complementary role to any top running back in college football this season.
What's the biggest objection about Miami? What is Joe asked us to start off with? I just ask again, what is their biggest weakness? Is it just going back to the offensive line?
It is. I think you gotta, if I think the offensive line is just figuring it out, right? I think it's more of a question than a concern. I think that it's fair to be concerned about to question what this is going to look like on the offensive line. They have to figure that out. I think both Samson Okunlola and Matthew McCoy maybe aren't the most traditional tackles. I don't think that these guys are, unless something changes, are going to be super high draft picks the way CeCe Mauigoa or Markel Bell were. I think it's going to have to become more of a collective effort. These guys just need to play really well together, be good enough. And I still think relative to 95% of the teams they play in the regular season, this offensive line is going to be good. But when I'm kind of nitpicking this roster, I'm viewing it from the lens of just the standard of this team is to be a top 5 team. So it's when you have to go to South Bend and play Notre Dame, or even you have to go to Clemson and play Clemson, that's still a talented team, or you kind of project to an ACC title game or the college football playoff. I'm going to be concerned about, the offensive line needs to gel together. The wide receiver room is really talented as a whole, but are they going to be good enough against the Notre Dames and against, Ohio State or Georgia or whoever it is that they're going to eventually have to play? How does the wide receiver room as a whole kind of step up in those situations? I think linebacker, they're old. They have Mo Torre, who's an 8th-year guy, Chase Smith, who's a 6th-year guy. Behind them, I think that the depth gets a little bit dicey. So the defensive line, I'm actually really confident in. I think they have to still go prove it, but I think it's fair to have questions about the line of scrimmage. And then again, I think a couple other holes on the roster, but I think the secondary is actually pretty elite. I don't think enough people nationally are giving Miami secondary enough credit for how good it is and how much they really bring back from that 2025 team. It's a lot of production, a lot of guys that have played a lot of football that are coming back and, getting better with an additional year. So definitely questions. I think there are definitely holes on this roster. This is not a perfect team, but again, within the landscape of college football, I think it's really as good as you could really ask for.
Yeah, I asked a question to a friend of mine in Miami, and I know that you put this in some of your reports. I said secondary ? Was the text I sent off, and he said, I don't know how good they are, but boy, do they have speed. That was the thing that he told me. And you talk about that explosion there. That's secondary. I mean, Jesus. And they really turned it on at the end of the year. Yeah. I guess how much do you think Notre Dame's going to get blown out by?
All right.
No,
all right.
This is going to take quite the turn. I'm super excited about that game, man. I think it's going to be fun. That's going to be what is it? That week, is that week 10 slate? That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that week 10 slate is absolutely insane because you have, Bama, LSU. Yep. You have Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, Miami's better than Bama, LSU.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Establish that. Thank you.
That's the premier game. Where I was going with that is to me, there's no question that's the premier game of that weekend. As good as it is,
maybe even the year. Maybe even the year if Ole Miss LSU doesn't end up being as crazy. But let's be honest ourselves.
I was here and tell everybody to go subscribe to Inside the U, but both of you are completely Complete. You still should go do it. By the way, Gabby, this was fantastic in all seriousness. This was amazing. I do think it's probably the game of the year. I mean, outside of Wayne and outside of the drama, we there's no football really being talked. You know, like it's more about the drama. That game has football talk. You know, like, and so I don't, you know, if we're being realistic, I don't completely disagree. All right. Inside the use where you need to be. You can use that promo code RJ60. I'm reading everything Gabby's writing. I'm addicted to everything he's doing over there. So go subscribe over there as well. Become a part of what is being built over there 24/7. Until then, Gabby, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon, brother.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much, guys.